The Rambler Network.
May ended up having more books than April, and I didn't think that was possible. I said at the end of the last month's book recap that the theme I actually kind of revealed what the theme was. There was no theme. May was a no theme month, even though there technically was a theme. It was basically it's basically nostalgic books. I'll just say that basically it was books I owned or didn't read. It was books I owned and didn't. Wait, no. Huh. The way that it started was books I owned and remembered, or owned and didn't read. And then it basically just turned into books I read as a kid, either owned or borrowed from the library. So, yeah. This month there were 20 books. So, yeah. There were 20 books this month. So let's jump right in that. First book, I did not read it. I owned it for the longest time. Hatchet by Gary Paulson, read by Peter Coyote. Started 1st of May, finished the 1st of May. It's a really short book. And yeah, I didn't know what I was expecting with this book. It was basically honestly, I knew what the cover. It was the famous cover with it's like the blue and pink, and then like it's a person's face, and like I recognized the cover. I'm like, I own that book. If you'd ask me what it's about, I'd be like, yes. Um, yeah, it was basically a kid in a plane. Plane goes down. Kid has to survive for a few months in nature, which is not even remotely close to what I was expecting. I don't even know what I was expecting, but yeah, I ended up liking it. Except I looked it up, and there's a whole series. The Gary Paulson wrote a whole series with this kid, but like there's like alternate timelines and stuff. Like the third book is like because like the first book is basically he's only there for a couple months, and there's a line at the end of the book that was basically, if he would have been there through winter, he'd have been really screwed. And the third book is basically, but what if he did? And then after that, every book after that is following that timeline, and I'm like, what? So what? You're just gonna skip this? You're gonna pretend the second book didn't happen? The second book is basically he takes the army out there to the woods and shows them what he did, how to survive, to teach them how to survive. I don't know. I decided to only read the first one. I looked at the Wikipedia to see what they were about, and I was like, I don't think I like this series. I like the first book, but I I don't know if I think this one didn't really need sequels, especially not those sequels. Second book, it was book 42 of the year. Frindle by Andrew Clemens, read by Keith Nobes. Knobs? I said Nobes. I don't know why I said that. Started the 1st of May, finished the 1st of May. Yeah, it was a busy day. Uh, so I read this one as a kid. I really liked it. Um, in fact, it was I hadn't thought of this book in a long, long, long time, like almost 30 years, until a couple years ago. I was talking with a friend of mine about how like your phone's always listening and algorithms and all that. And I said I could just randomly say something like Frindle, and all of a sudden I'm gonna see that as either as an ad somewhere, as YouTube recommended, or on my For You page on TikTok. I'm gonna see Frindle somewhere in the next week. I guarantee it. And I told her this, and she was like, "Yeah, yeah, let's see." And the next day, on YouTube, on my recommendations was somebody reviewing the book. It was it was like 6 years previously. It was a video posted 6 years previously, and it was like some girl reviewing the book Frindle, and I took a picture of my screen. I was like, look, look, and she was like, you were right. And so I think of that when I think of Frindle now, and but I also think when I think of Frindle, I think, oh, I read that as a kid. That was I was gonna say one of my favorite nostalgic books, but it's up there. I've always liked it. And so I finished it. And you know what's funny? As a kid, I always thought of the teacher being more antagonistic. But of course, I was a kid at the time. Of course, the teacher's antagonistic. But then, like, read it this time, and I'm like, I think the teacher was like, I think she respected him. She was like on his side, and like the teacher was not an antagonist. I don't know why I thought that. Probably because I was a kid, and of course, the teacher's an antagonist. But then when I was reading that, I was kind of researching a little bit, and I found out he wrote a sequel called The Frindle Files. It released, I think, in 2021. Like, it just released like a couple years ago. I think 2024. Actually, hang on. I think if I remember right, he died. And wait, Andrew. Actually, easier to type in Frindle because like Andrew who? No, Final Destination. Why did it look up Final Destination? Frindle, 1996 by Andrew Clements. Andrew Clements died 2019, and the Frindle Files was released. Go back. Film adaptation. Oh, they were announcing. As of 2024, there's no further development. Frindle Files was released August 27th, 2024. So, yeah, it was released a few years after he died. So the Frindle Files, I was like, oh, what's this going to be about? How are they going to make a sequel to the Frindle Files? And I love the premise of it. I read it because like the first book, it's really short. I want to say maybe a couple hundred. Actually, you know what? I have the Wikipedia pulled up right here. Frindle, it has 105 pages. I was right. And the sequel, I don't believe the sequel has no, it doesn't. The sequel it feels like a legacy sequel because like the first one's like very lighthearted. It's like this is a kid's book. Like I can imagine everything bright and colorful and like magic school bus type, and then this one's more like it's still set in that world, but it's like more grounded. And I can imagine like kind of like a legacy sequel. Like they kind of like reference the first one, how ridiculous the premise of the first one was, and it's about like this kid. He's in class, and I I don't remember the specifics. He comes across the word frindle, and so he finds out his teacher is the kid from the first book. And just like Luke Skywalker in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, he's kind of angry and bitter. Not like angry and bitter like Luke Skywalker was, but he's like, uh, he got kind of famous and it got annoying, so he changed his name and became a teacher, and now everyone forgets him. And then hang on. In the first book, it's like the book ends. Frindle becomes this huge thing. It's in the dictionary, and all of that. And it is kind of a ridiculous premise that like this kid makes up the word frindle and it blows up and everyone uses it. It kind of implies at the end of the first book that frindle officially replaces the word pen. But the sequel, it kind of like pulls back. It kind of zooms out and shows like the wider world, and like the main character, his mom remembers that she was like, oh yeah, that was like that was like a fad around my school back when I was growing up, and like people in our area used it and it kind of became famous, but then it kind of fizzled out after a few months. And I was like, that's honestly more realistic. If this were to actually happen, like it would be like like uh I'm trying to I'm trying to think of a real life example, and it's not that I can't think of any, that I think of too many. But like yeah, like people will come up with something, and it blows up over the weekend. People use it with it becomes like a meme. Maybe it's in the yearbook. I'm not yearbook. The dictionary. Yeah, it's in the dictionary. It doesn't really mean anything now because they'll add anything. Something becomes trendy. It's a meme. The next year's edition of the dictionary, it's in the dictionary now. So like, yeah. And you know what's funny? Like, when I was a kid, they always said ain't a word. They'd be like, ain't isn't a word. It's not in the dictionary. And I remember that being um a thing in the books where people saying ain't isn't in the dictionary. But in the first book, it's actually mentioned that ain't is in the dictionary. I thought that was a more recent thing where ain't is in the dictionary, so it's a word. But I actually, the first time I ever heard ain't isn't a word because it isn't in the dictionary was this book. And it turns out it's referenced in this book that ain't is in the dictionary. It's just not proper to use. And I'm like, wait, where did I hear that then? Why did I think that's where I got this from? And then everyone else says it. I don't think everyone got it from this book. This is the first time I've ever heard it mentioned, like, ain't in the dictionary being in, like, the same thought. And I'm spending too much time on Frindle, so I'm gonna move on. I'm 3 books into a 20-book month. I better not stay on this. Book number 44 of the year. Oh yeah, the Frindle Files started May 1st and finished the 2nd of May. The first day of the month, I did 3 books. Well, 2 books and started a third. So, yeah. How did I get 20 books? To be honest, some of these are really short, so that may have been part of it. Anyway, the 4th book this month, The Grass is Always Greener Over the Septic Tank by Irma Bombeck. Read by Barbara Rosenblatt. Started the 2nd of May, finished the 2nd of May, also really short. I remember reading this one, of course, I could say that about all of these. So my grandparents had a lot of books, especially my grandpa. He had a lot of books, and I would go through them, and there's a lot of old Reader's Digest condensed books. He had a bunch of those. And then we actually had a bunch of like random books, random novels. That's how I found out Jaws was a novel. I never read it, but I had the movie poster for Jaws. It was on this book. I'm like, hey Grandpa, what's this? And he goes, oh, that movie was a book. I was like, oh. Anyway, and I put it back down. I'd probably read it now. I probably should have, but I didn't because I didn't actually read it as a kid. Grass is Always Greener Over the Septic Tank was one of them. And it was, honestly, I didn't research this. I don't know if it was fiction or if it was autobiographical, but basically the premise of it is the author moves into the suburbs, and because I think it is autobiographical because she uses like her own name, and like the Bombecks are moving to the suburbs, that sort of thing. And it's a comedy. I think it's both autobiographical and satirical because she uses a lot of absurdist humor, and I was laughing a lot listening to this. It was a funny book. As a kid, I read this when I was like, I want to say 8 or 9. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the humor. I was reading, oh, this is interesting. I want to move to the suburbs. And I'm listening to it now, and I'm thinking, this is like Hitchhiker's Guide level absurdist humor, and I love it. And I kind of want to look up, because apparently she had this was her style of humor, and she wrote a lot of books like this, and I want to look them up because it's hilarious. I love that kind of humor. Book 45 of the year, the 5th book of this month. I read this book so many times growing up. In fact, I actually just read it, I want to say a couple years ago. So this wasn't one of those books that I hadn't read in forever. I've actually revisited it recently. The House with the Clock in Its Walls by John Bellairs, read by George Guidall. Started the 2nd of May, finished the 5th of May. Okay, so the 1st and 2nd of the month I was off, which is how I was able to get through so many books, and then I had to go back to work. So some of these books are short, and then you'll see that it took me several days. It's not because it took me so long, because I take forever. It's because I had to work. I have a life outside of this podcast. House with the Clock in Its Walls. Actually, I read that before Harry Potter, to the point where when I found Harry Potter in the late 90s, the way that I interpreted that story was heavily influenced by this story. And so, like, my interpretation of Harry Potter in the early days, like, it was definitely my own because everyone had their own vision, and mine was shaped by House with the Clock in Its Walls. And when I tried to like explain that to people, they were like, "But they're completely different." I get that. They're not the same. But in my mind, they were kind of, it wasn't just like the witchcraft stuff. I think some of the artwork from the US version of Harry Potter, and that it kind of reminded me of the artwork in House of the Clock in Its Walls. And I think that's where the mix up is. Not really mix up. It's I saw one and I thought of the other, and so like yeah. And then like as the series progressed and like the movies came out and like everyone had like the same thoughts, and yeah, it kind of like blended in with the others. So like before the movies came out, I had the first three books. They were my vision of them were inspired by this book. Yeah. So, like I said, growing up, I read it a lot. I read House of the Clock in Its Walls. I read it a lot as a kid. Only recently, like 2 years ago, I found out it's part of a wider series. There's, I think, 8 books. I don't remember. But when I found out, I used Hoopla to read the whole series. And I was going to do that here, but I decided not to. I wanted to move on. Plus, like, I just did that, like, a couple years ago. Like, I wasn't doing this at the time. I wasn't doing I was just, like, reading. I mean, I'm still reading for fun, but, like, it wasn't like, oh, this month I'm reading this. I'm going to log it. And, yeah. Um, Before I did this whole reading recap thing and, like, the themes and everything, doing it for the podcast, I would read occasionally, but it would take me a long time. Like it took me like 8 months to do the whole series. Not because it took me that long, but because like it wasn't something I was like actively doing, you know. It's like, oh, it's either listen to a podcast, sometimes I'll listen to a podcast, sometimes I'll listen to an audiobook, and then it's not even always the same podcast. Now I listen to one book at a time. Back then, it's like, okay, I feel like listening to this book, and then tomorrow I'm going to listen to some more of this book, and then I've had like 4 or 5 different books going on at once, but now it's more structured and organized, and I had listened with a purpose. And then after that, okay, so you notice up until now the books have been kind of lighthearted, you know, even though I started with a survival book. They've been kind of lighthearted-ish. House of the Clock in Its Walls, it was still a children's book, but it aimed kind of darker. That was starting to go into kind of the darker books because there's some books I read as a kid where I'm thinking, why did I read this? Prey by Michael Crichton was not, you know, like a super heavy book, but read by Robert Sean Leonard, started the 6th of May, finished the 6th of May. He wasn't that heavy. I knew Michael Crichton from Jurassic Park. I didn't read that book as a kid. My first time reading that book was last month. But I knew Michael Crichton wrote Jurassic Park. So I came across Prey by Michael Crichton in the library, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, Michael Crichton. And yeah, like I could totally like it's kind of weird to say Prey is the first Michael Crichton book I ever read because until last month it was the only Michael Crichton book I ever read. But considering, you know, I'd seen the movie Jurassic Park and then I read this book and I could kind of see like, okay, I kind of see his style. And then especially after doing the book Jurassic Park last month, he definitely has a style, and it like it's kind of like, people say like Stephen King, like he'll take and then like Family Guy had that joke about Stephen King, where he's like, they have a haunted lamp. Yeah, yeah, it's an evil lamp. And the publisher was like, when can you have it done? And I'm like, I'm not saying that was Michael Crichton, but like I can kind of see it was the same thing. Like he put a lot of science jingo, a lot of science lingo in there, and there's a lot of science. There's a good story there. I liked it. Um, and then, but then it's just like so much science. I'm like, okay, just get on with the story. I don't need to know how the nanobots worked. I just want to know the story. And that was kind of my issue with The Lost World, where, I mean, it was a decent story, but it was just talking science, like science and philosophy, which it could be interesting, but I just want a story. I mean, you have a story with dinosaurs, and you're talking philosophy. I mean, just show me the dinosaurs. And it's here. It's the killer nanobot cloud, and you're going to like the morality of having this science out in the world, and like I just want to see a nano cloud devour somebody. Number 47 this month or this year. This is when it gets to the point where, why was I reading this at the age of 10? Hammer of Eden by Ken Follett, read by January Lavoie. Started the 6th of May, finished the 6th of May. I did that in one day. Oh, it is a really long. It's not a really long book. It felt longer than that. Yeah. I remember the basics of it as a kid. Like I remember when I thought of this book, I thought of, it was a terrorist group who basically caused earthquakes. So now that I'm living in San Francisco, and every time I feel an earthquake, my first thought has always been, I wonder if this was caused by someone. Like, I know it's not. I don't know if like what happens in Hammer of Eden can even actually happen. But like in my mind, that's just kind of where my mind goes, is I wonder if this was a terrorist group. Kind of like jokingly in my mind. I know realistically it's like the plates moving and all of that, but like that's just where my mind was. I read that at too young. But then I read the book this month, and like within like 20 minutes there's like a graphic sex scene, and it's basically like there's like two people talking, and then like he turns her around and he rips off her pants, and then he takes her from behind. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I was reading this at 10. um, and it goes detail. It's like, it would be like a full 5-minute graphic depiction. I'm like, why was I reading this at 10? And then it goes to like, it cuts back and forth between like a cult leader's perspective and then like a detective's perspective, and then the story itself is really interesting, and like you actually sympathize with kind of the cult a little bit, and then like their reasonings behind why they're doing what they're doing, and then the detective, like, obviously what she doesn't, but when she finds clues, it's like, oh, it's kind of cool watching her find, like, it's kind of cool watching her gather clues. Sometimes she's right, sometimes she's wrong, but she's usually close. And I think it's a really interesting book. Number 48, getting kind of light again. Ida B and her plans to maximize fun, avoid disaster, and possibly save the world. By Catherine Hennigan, read by Lily Taylor. Started the 6th of May, finished the 10th of May. This is another one like Hatchet I owned, but I never read as a kid. Actually, kind of. I read the first chapter, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get into this. And then I put it down and never got picked back up. Not because I didn't want to, it's, it's kind of like gaming. Like, sometimes I'll be really into a video game, and then I just put it down. Like I started playing. I bought Crimson Dusk. No, Crimson Dawn. No, Crimson Desert. It's like, uh, yeah, Crimson Desert. I bought that. And I was playing it for like a week. And I'm like, yeah, this is really fun. This is great. I love it. And then I moved on to something else. And then I realized, oh, I stopped playing Crimson Desert. And if you've played it, you realize the control scheme is really unique. It's a very unique. It took maybe a couple hours to get used to it, and I stopped playing it for like a month or two. And the other day I picked it back up, and I couldn't actually pick it back up because the controls are so unique. I didn't know what I was doing, and I quickly stopped playing it again. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah, IDB. Uh, Basically, like, she's homeschooled her whole life. She has her whole unique personality, and she's forced to go to school, and it's torture, and she hates it. But she has to go to school because her mom has cancer, and they have a really interesting way of like presenting that, but not in like a depressive way, like from a childhood perspective. Like, mom's sick, like, and you can kind of like tell. And at one point in the book, I don't know if there was a time skip or not, because she's like, and it was like that for the next 4 years. And I was like, oh, we just jumped ahead 4 years. But then like things continued the way they were, and I'm like, was that a time skip, or was she just saying, oh, by the way, things stay like this for the next 4 years, but I'm going to continue the story from here? And I finished the story, and I still don't know if there was a time skip. Was that a time skip, or was she just telling me what happens ahead of time? I don't know. Number 49, Fear Nothing by Dean Koontz, read by Keith. I don't want to pronounce that. I don't think I could. Szarabajka. Started the 10th of May, finished the 12th of May. I read this as a kid, and I remember Dean Koontz said in the introduction, I believe, or the introduction, he says somewhere in there that, oh, these are real people. I'm telling their story. And as a kid, I'm thinking, okay, these are real people. And so if I had thought about it over the years, I would have been like, I don't think that was a true story. Kind of like Fargo. The events that you're about to see are based on a true story. The names have been changed to respect the names of the people or whatever. But reading this now, I am pretty sure that it's not a true story, because the main character just up and kills somebody at one point. I think it was a cop. And then he just put it in the story, and then he gets away with it. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't put that in the book if it was a true story. There was something I didn't know until now. Kind of like Frindle. I didn't know there was a sequel, Seize the Night. No, I did not read that. It's not available. I mean, technically there is an audiobook, but it wasn't available on Hoopla or Libby or Spotify. It's available on Audible. It is available on Spotify, but I had to pay for it. I'm slowly finding out. Not everything is included with premium on Spotify audiobooks. A vast majority of them are, but there are some books that you have to pay for. And I don't want to pay for audiobooks on Spotify. I want to use it for music and audiobooks that are included with premium. It is available on Audible to purchase, but I try to avoid using Audible when I can. I would rather get it on Libby or Hoopla. So for now, I am not reading the sequel, and it's even though there's only 2 books, it's still considered the Half Moon Bay trilogy. I think it's Half Moon. No, that's Half Moon Bay is around here. Well, crap, I forgot the name. The name of that city, the little town. It's a small town that it takes place in. It's called blah 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 trilogy, even though there's two books, because he's been saying for like 30 years, oh, yep, the third book's coming. It's coming. The third book is coming. I am working on it. And he still hasn't released it. So, yeah. Book 50. Okay, so remember when I reached the goal, my original? So, do you remember when I reached my first reading goal this year? 24 books. I read a book physically. It was my friend's book. And I was like, I don't read books physically. I don't have the time or concentration. And that was the first time I'd read a book physically since 2013 when I read Psycho by Robert Bloch. And then I realized, oh, actually, maybe I do have the time and concentration, or at least the concentration. I don't really have the time, as previously stated. I work too much. Well, it only took me like basically essentially a day to read it, even though it looked like 2 days on the thing. Because I for some reason I started reading that book like an hour before midnight, and then I finished it the next day. So I could have just waited till after midnight to read it and be like, oh look, I read it in a day. Well, the same thing happened to for book 50. I decided to do something different for book 50. There's a book I'd read as a kid, and I liked it a lot. I can say that about all of these. Otherwise, I wouldn't be revisiting them. It's called Bound for Freedom by Ruth Tressman. Started the 12th of May. Finished the 13th of May. Read by me, physically. Because it was book 50, I decided to do something different. Okay, so funny story about this book. I think I have okay, I am not being literal, but I also don't know if I'm not being literal. I think I may have the only copy because I can't find really anything about this book online. In fact, it would be funny. It would be hilarious if it turns out this was the book I owned as a kid, because I own it physically. When I bought it I bought it on Amazon, and it was one copy left. Order now, and so I bought it, and yeah, I'm thinking, oh yeah, this is the same cover. This is the same book I had as a kid. And I look online and there's nothing. There's like, there's very little, yeah, I can't words. There are stuff. In fact, on Goodreads, there is a page for it. It would be weird if there wasn't, but there was no cover. There's no cover art for the book on Goodreads. You know how weird that is? That's basically the IMDb of books. And yeah, and then on hardcover, that's the main book logging app I'm using. I use that to log the books I'm reading. It wasn't in there at all. I actually, if you go on a hardcover and you look up Bound for Freedom by Ruth Chessman, it's all flashed out. I have the cover art. I put the description, the year, the publisher. Through this, I found out that, okay, this book came out, actually, hang on, let me see. I think 1965. And that was 2 years before the ISBN numbers were invented. And so instead, there's like an Amazon's like AIBN or something like that. I don't remember. The book has the Amazon number. And so there's a slot for that on hardcover. I entered that. And anything I could find on this book, I put it on the hardcover page. And so it's fleshed out. And I manually cataloged this book, and in my you know how thoroughly I researched this book, trying to find everything I could. I found out Ruth Tressman passed away. Obviously, this book came out over 50 years ago, but in my research, I accidentally found her daughter on Facebook. I didn't send a friend request, but I saw her page and I was like, oh, that's her daughter, and I kind of like. Everything's public on there. Like, I was kind of scrolling through. I was like I wasn't like stalking or anything. I wanted to make sure it was her. I was like, okay, she just has like the same like name or whatever as the daughter that was listed on the other site, and I was scrolling through and she like posted like, "Oh, it's the anniversary of my mom's passing, Ruth Chessman." I'm like, "Oh, okay, it is her daughter. Okay, yeah. Should I send her a message? No, that'd be weird. Moving on." And so, yeah, that was book 50. I've talked about the book itself, but not the story. Basically, the kid it starts out in, I want to say London. It starts out in England, I know. And there's this kid, and it makes it very clear his father is not that good. His father is horrible. Beats him, neglects him, gets him ill-fitting clothes, and then like by the end of like the second chapter, his father is selling him for a little bit of money to a ship, to a captain of a ship going to America. Basically, sold him to servitude, and he was a slave in the U.S. And honestly, as I was reading it this time, because like I obviously when I read it the first time, I was like maybe 10 or 11. I was like, "Whoa, that kid's father was horrible. Oh, he's a slave. That's not nice." I didn't really understand the story that much. Well, reading it now, I'm thinking this would make a good, if not movie, then like a TV show. Make like a Rhoda Avonlea type show with Bound for Freedom, because there's like so many storylines. It's a short book, but there's like so many characters and so many arcs. Like, it's one of those stories where like they kind of gloss over so much. There's so much implied, and like I think like 2 years go by over the course of the story, or maybe more. I don't remember. But so much time goes by and so much happens. It's all condensed into a short book. And I'm thinking, this should make a good TV show. Like, take all those little implied stories and, like, stretch them out into, like, full length stories, to full seasons. Especially if it takes place over the course of a couple of years. You got at least 2 or 3 seasons out of this. It would be a good show. And if it was a movie, it would, kind of rushed movie. It's a good book. Maybe not a good movie because it is kind of rush at certain points, unless you condense it into 1 year, which wouldn't make sense. Make it into a 2 or 3 season show. I would watch the heck out of that. And then for book 51, Shiloh by Phyllis Reynolds. Namor. Phyllis Reynolds Naylor, read by Peter McNowell. I don't know. I feel like everyone read this growing up, or at least watched the movie. Started the 13th of May, finished the 13th of May. And I immediately follow that with Shiloh Season by Phyllis, her same author, read by Michael Moriarty, who played in the movies. Started the 13th of May, finished the 13th of May, and followed up with Saving Shiloh by the same author, read by Henry Levia. Started the 14th of May, finished the 14th of May. I did the whole Shiloh trilogy, and then I watched the trilogy, and not gonna lie, the movies are better than the books. It's not very often that happens. The books are good, but they feel okay. So the books are written from the perspective of the main character, and he's like a small town country kid, and it's written from his perspective in his voice, and he's not very educated, and so it comes off that way. And the books flesh out the story. So, yeah, I kind of like the movies better. Let's see. Book 54, Through the Window. Through the Window by Diane Fanning, read by Thomas M. Hanning. Started the 15th of May, finished the 19th of May. I'm a huge fan of true crime. I have been into true crime most of my life. Since I was a teenager. I want to say 12. Um, I, so I always say my favorite true crime story is the Zodiac Killer. And so people assume that that was my first true crime story. This is the one that got me into it. Honestly, no, it was Through the Window by Diane Fanning. It's about Tommy Lynn Sells. He was a very, very disturbing serial killer that I should not have been reading at the age of 12. And as much as I listen to true crime podcasts and watch the documentaries, I don't think I've heard any of them talk about him. But at the same time, like, I kind of don't blame them. It's very disturbing. Like, you think of, like, the Toy Box Killer, that's... The Toy Box Killers are like, one of the most disturbing serial killers out there. And almost every true crime podcast covers them at some point. I don't think anyone's ever covered Tommy Lynn Sells, not that I've heard. But yeah, that's what got me into true crime. So, yeah, at age 12. Book 55 is another one that I read as a kid, which I should actually not say that anymore because that's pretty much all of these. But then I later found out a couple years ago there's a whole series. Actually, I read the first two growing up, and I found out it's not that I didn't know there was a series. I didn't know how many there were. I thought maybe it was a trilogy. I found out I think there's 8. It's Among the Hidden by Margaret Peterson Haddix, read by Stephen Boyer. Started the 19th of May, finished the 20th of May. Basically, the premise is in this world, there's the population police. They pass a law saying you're no longer allowed to have more than 2 kids. The third child is illegal, and they have to be put to death. And people have third children. The main character is the third child, and he lives in fear. And there's a whole story there. And I recommend, actually, I'm not going to tell you anything else. You should there's a whole series, and that's really good, and I recommend it. The second one, he's at a school, and I don't want to tell anymore. Book 56 of the year, The Gospel According to Larry by Janet Tashjian, read by Jesse Eisenberg. Started the 21st of May, finished the 21st of May. This is a trilogy. I read the first 2 in high school. The third one was released after I graduated, and I didn't read it until I haven't read it yet. Basically, he starts a secret blog, kind of like a guru type thing. Like, this is how we should live our life. He does it's a layer reveal type story, which is kind of annoying, but when done right, this one's spread across a trilogy. I realize how long I've been recording, and I'm trying to speed them up, so I'm not going to talk much about them. Next, number 57, I have The Pigman by Paul Zendel, read by Eden Regal and Charlie McWade. Started the 21st of May, finished the 21st of May. These 2 kids. I read it. Okay, again, I read this and the next one as a kid. The Pigman Legacy by Paul Zendel, read by same readers. Started the 22nd of May, finished the 23rd of May. Both books I read as a kid. I didn't remember the format. The format's really interesting. The reason there's 2 readers is it goes back and forth between the two protagonists, the perspective, and it goes back and forth between Eden and Charlie as narrators. And the first one, they meet this old guy, they befriend him, and he's like has an impact on their life, and then he passes away suddenly. And then the second one, they stop by that guy's house. They're like, hey, I thought I saw a face in his window. Like, why is there someone in there? They go into the house and, oh, there's an old guy, like staying in the house. Like, he shouldn't be here. So they befriend him. And then, what do you know? He dies too. It's actually a really good story, and I like that. And then I found out there's a third one called The Pigman in Me by Paul Zindel, read by Jeff Wood. What? One narrator? It's because it's an autobiography. It's basically the real life story that happened to him that inspired the Pigman books. And unfortunately, he also passed away. Paul Zindel. I found out while reading this. I was like, hey, is he going to write a third one? Because I want an actual third. Because like the way that the second book ended, it's like I want to know what happens to the two protagonists after. Is he going to write a third, like an actual third book? And then I saw he passed away in like 2003, and I was like, probably not. And then the final book of the month. I knew when I started this, I was going to finish the month with this. In fact, I started the month, I mapped out the month. I had 10 books listed, and I had this as the last book. And every time I added more books, I kept this at the end because I wanted to end the month with this. It's book 60 of the year, but it's technically book 60, 61, 62, 63, and 64. But I decided not to do that. It's the Spiderwick Chronicles by Holly Black and Tony D. Turles? I don't know. Read by Mark Hamill. Yep, Mark Hamill read these. It is amazing. Started the 26th of May. Wait, started the 25th of May, finished the 26th of May. I started it when I got home from work, and I finished it the next day. Why did I put the... Hang on, let me edit this. This is annoying. 25th, there we go. Anyway, so the Spiderwick Chronicles is 5 books, but they're basically novellas. I don't know why they did it this way. They're really short, but it's one complete story, and it's kind of annoying that they split it up. Because I read them as a kid. It was in the library at school, and they were like really tiny books, they're like 100 pages each, and they're hardback, and they were like really tiny. And I'd check it out from the library. I'd finish it in like an hour. And then I would have to wait till the next day to turn it in and get the next one. Finally, I didn't think when I read the first one in like a half hour at home. I had to wait till the next day. I got to the school the next day, checked out the second one, took it home. Same thing happened. Third day, I went ahead and checked out book 3, 4, and 5. I'm like, I'm not doing that again. But because these are so short and it's one continuous story, one complete story, I decided to make it just one entry. And I was telling a friend that, and they were like, wait, The Lord of the Rings is like one complete story, but you split it into 3. Yeah, that's different. See, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King, yeah, they're part of one overarching story, one continuing story. You could like take out the dividers and it would still make sense. But each book still, first off, all 3 books are really long, but they also have their own arcs. Like they have a beginning, middle, end, their own conflicts, their own conclusions. There's just an overarching story connecting the 3 stories. So that's why I gave those 3 separate entries. This, on the other hand, is not. It's not 5 separate books with whatever. It's one continuing story, and I honestly don't know why they split it up like that. It's kind of weird to me that they did that. Like I'm thinking like, The only thing I could think of is they realized they would make more money by selling 5 individual books. I mean, they came out one after the other. It's not like Harry Potter where one came out and you have to wait 2 or 3 years. They came out with I think within a year, all 5 came out. I think like across 2003 and 2004, if I remember correctly, which I probably am not. I don't know, but yeah. Uh, anyway, I put them all into one, and I like it. They did make it into a movie, and I found out that I think it's on Peacock or a Apple TV Plus or something. I don't remember. A couple years ago, it was remade into a TV show on one of the streaming things. There's 8 episodes, which is longer than a movie, so I think might be better than the movie. The movie was good. I liked the movie. I saw when it came out. Like I said, I read it in high school, and then the movie came out, and I'm like, I love this. This is great. But then, they did kind of leave out like most of the fourth book when they made the movie. So maybe with the 8 episode show, they actually put everything in. So what I want to do, which I established earlier, I don't have the time. I want to watch the movie and then watch the show right after. So that's something I want to do. I just don't really have the time. I was able to watch the Shiloh trilogy that day because I was off. I was off 2 days back to back, and I did the Shiloh 1 and 2 the first day, and then Shiloh 3 the second day, and then did the trilogy right after. So basically, my 2 days off was nothing but Shiloh. Okay, so that concludes May, the themed no theme month. June has a theme. I'm not going to reveal it yet, but I already have 10 books lined up. Uh, yeah, some of these are short, so I feel like I'm like I said before, I'm not aiming to do 10 books every month. Except I am. Now I am. I'm starting with 10 books, especially when some of them are shorter. Like this month, like some of them were like 100 pages. Like I did like 2 or 3 books in a day at some points. But I have a theme for next month, and I can't wait to start it. I will say, some of the books I could have read this month, and some of the books I could have read last month. That's all I will say.
The Rambler Network.